Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Had a whole bunch of people send me this story, including my friend Tom. And I said, yeah, Tom, I've seen that story. And he said, well, why haven't you done it yet? And I said, oh, I'm getting to it. So this is from 9news.com, and many people sent it, including Tom. And it's out of Kansas. Federal judge grants injunction banning the Kansas two-step highway patrol tactic. This is not a dance. What we're talking about here is, as you may know, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled about how long it is that a police officer can conduct a traffic stop while still kind of like thinking about what he's going to do or she's going to do. Going to write you a ticket, going to ask to search your car, going to run a canine around your car, that kind of thing. And so the Supreme Court back in 2015 in a case called Rodriguez actually ruled, and I'll give you the quote, a police stop exceeding the time needed to handle the matter for which the stop was made violates the Constitution's shield against unreasonable seizures. So then a stop is unlawful if it is prolonged beyond the time reasonably required to complete the mission of issuing a ticket for the violation. So in that case, a guy's driving along, police officer says, I saw the guy swerve. And this was not in Kansas, but that's not the point. So the police officer pulls the guy over, and the traffic stop becomes too long because if you're pulling somebody over for swerving in traffic, how long should that stop be? You approach the car, you talk to the driver, and see if there's any obvious reason that his swerving might be a problem. Is he intoxicated? Is he struggling for control of the vehicle with people who are on board fighting him? I mean, and so after this case came out, a lot of people thought, okay, the Supreme Court has now spoken, and the Supreme Court said they can't unreasonably extend a stop just to go fishing. So what they've been doing in Kansas, and this is a thing, this is actually a thing, it's not like somebody's imagination, what they've told the troopers in Kansas to do is you pull somebody over for a traffic ticket, and you write them the ticket, and as you're walking away from the car, you pull a Columbo, and you stop yourself, and you go, oh, and you go back to the car and go, hey, I got some more questions for you. And now people would say, but you just extended the stop. They go, oh, no. This is now a second stop. See, the first stop ended when I handed you the ticket and I walked away. But you go, wait, but my car hasn't moved since you stopped it. This is obviously the same stop. And they were making the argument that no. Once we walked away and came back, that's another stop altogether. And they've been making that argument with a straight face, as I say, for some time now. And it turns out a federal judge has granted an injunction banning the practice, banning the Kansas two-step highway patrol tactic. So with the two-step, troopers finish the initial traffic stop, issue a ticket or a warning, start to walk away, then turn back to talk more to the driver. And when questioned about that, they'd say, oh, it's a second thing altogether. It doesn't have anything to do with the first one. So the Kansas Highway Patrol must stop using the Kansas two-step to detain out-of-state drivers, which is what they're largely doing. And they were doing that to find a reason to search their vehicles for illegal drugs. So a federal judge has issued an injunction. U.S. District Judge Catherine Vertil on Monday granted the permanent injunction. The injunction was not unexpected. It follows her ruling back in July that determined that the tactic violated drivers' constitutional rights against unreasonable searches. So she'd already ruled and said this practice is wrong. She's now ruled and said, and it's got to stop. Spokesperson for the KHP said the order is being reviewed by the state attorney general's office and declined further comment. A message left with the office of the attorney general was not immediately returned. So obviously they could appeal this, and a court of appeals could consider it and possibly reverse it or let it stand or modify it or send it back for reconsideration. But as of right now, the injunction has several requirements, including cameras and audio for all marked and unmarked patrol cars. It also says troopers must inform drivers that they can refuse or revoke consent for search at any time. The injunction also requires better training and documentation. So going forward, right now, if you're in Kansas right now, you're driving along and a police officer pulls you over, he better have a camera rolling and audio rolling, whether he's marked or unmarked. And He's got to inform you that you can refuse a search. So this is one of the things that a lot of people don't know, and when they hear it, they're kind of surprised. And that is, if a police officer says, "May I search your car?" you can say no. No. And the reason they're asking, it's because without them asking and you saying yes, they might not have any legal reason to search your car. But if they ask you and you say yes, it becomes you gave them permission. And so they'll often act as if you can't say no, but they will always phrase it as a question that you are answering. They're not going to say, "We're going to search your car now, get out," unless they think they have the right to do that. Instead, they're going to say, "May I search your car?" And if you say yes because you think you have to say yes, well, they now have to tell you you don't have to say yes. And you can revoke your consent for search. So once they start searching, you say, "Guys, I changed my mind. Stop." And they got to stop, believe it or not. So with the two-step, troopers finished the initial traffic stop, issued the ticket or the warning, started to walk away, then turned back to talk more to the driver, which allowed them to keep looking for reasons to search the vehicle or to buy time for a drug-sniffing dog to get there. And that's another thing. There have been cases where a police officer walks up to a car, he's suspicious, but he's got nothing to go on but a hunch. Talks to the person, writes him a ticket, and goes, "May I search your car?" "No." "Okay, well, you wait here while we get a canine." You don't have to wait. And so courts have ruled that if the canine is there, they can get the dog out and run the dog around your car. If they can do that without extending the stop unreasonably. But if the dog is in another car on the other side of the county, you might have a problem. So the American Civil Liberties Union sued on behalf of 3 drivers and 2 passengers who were traveling in 2017, 18, and 19 from neighboring Colorado. And they think the problem here is that Colorado's legalized recreational marijuana use. So the judge concluded that the patrol targeted drivers traveling along I-70 to or from states that have legalized either the medicinal or the recreational use, and therefore the stuff's become easier to get in those states, while Kansas has not authorized either. So they're just playing the odds. They're just thinking, okay, here comes a car from Colorado, good chance that there's marijuana on board, which would not be legal in any setting in Kansas. So the legal director for the ACLU of Kansas said in a statement, "The Kansas Highway Patrol is not above the law. While KHP made various attempts to sidestep accountability for its practices and put off this injunction, the Constitution has prevailed." So there she's calling it a sidestep of the Kansas two-step. Very complicated, but we could pattern this out on the ground with little footprints, and you just, to the music. The patrol previously defended its tactic as a response to I-70 serving as a major corridor for drug traffickers. But Ratil said in the July ruling that the patrol waged war on motorists. The war is basically a question of numbers. Stop enough cars, and you're bound to discover drugs. And what's the harm of a few constitutional rights are trampled along the way? She asked rhetorically. Questions about the tactics became more visible after Colorado legalized recreational marijuana almost a decade ago. Missouri did the same thing in 2022, and Oklahoma allows medical use of marijuana. Only a handful of states don't allow at least medical use. So again, it goes back to the original ruling of Rodriguez in 2015, saying that the police stop can only be as long as necessary for the officers to do their job, and that is approach the car, identify the driver, go back to their car, write a warning or a ticket, or decide not to, come back up to the car, inform the driver of what's going on, and then let them go. And that's that. Now, unfortunately, and a lot of people assume that there is a time deadline, that there's a drop-dead moment where if an officer overshoots that moment by 1 second, cannot write you a ticket. The Supreme Court doesn't like giving rules that precise, specifically because, as you can imagine, there might be circumstances where 18 minutes might be appropriate. And there might be circumstances where 12 is not. It's too long. It depends. It depends on the situation. Where are you? Is there traffic nearby? Is it raining out? These kinds of things. But I can tell you that on at least one occasion, I was pulled over by a police officer. Not sure if I've ever mentioned this one before. A long, long time ago. By a police officer very early in the morning who actually asked me, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going home." He said, "Where are you coming from?" Because it was after midnight in a quiet little town. And I said, "I'm coming from the radio station." And he goes, "Oh, what were you doing there?" I go, "I work there. I just started working there." And he's, "Oh, okay." And he hands me back my license and registration. And I go, "Why'd you pull me over?" And he goes, "I didn't recognize the car. Good night." And he turns around and walks away. He admitted he pulled me over because he just didn't recognize the car. It's a small town. He'd never seen the car before. That's not a legal reason to pull somebody over. But the guy did that because he was bored. It's past midnight. Ain't nobody else on the road but me and him. So he pulls me over. So I have that panicky sensation for a couple minutes. I've been pulled over. I might get ticketed. What did I do? Did I do anything wrong? I'm trying to think, And I remember I come out to my car. It's dark out, but my car's been parked for over 8 hours because I just worked a full shift. So I fire the car up. It's still cold, so it's not like I was racing or anything like that. I pull out. I'm driving down. I can tell you exactly where I was. I was on Van Dyke, M53. I'm driving along, and all of a sudden I see the lights go on behind me. I wasn't speeding, hadn't made any illegal turns, hadn't hit the fog line, hadn't swerved, hadn't done anything. Nothing. Why'd you pull me over? Didn't recognize the car. Okay. So, I know that people out there who think I'm too rough on cops, but you got to understand what this type of thing does for the public relations image of the Kansas Highway Patrol. If people know and they read about how if you're simply driving through Kansas with out-of-state plates, a police officer might pull you over just because you're on a major drug corridor in their state. And not everyone driving that corridor is a mule, And so this is the kind of stuff that gives them a bad name. But luckily, a federal judge has just issued an injunction. And you got to understand how unusual this injunction is. This is extremely unusual. And trust me, I'm an attorney. Been practicing for 32 years. I can think of very few times where a federal judge has come out and said, "I need an entire police force to change what they're doing." Now, I've heard it at the level of a city, for instance, where a police force has been ordered by a judge in a city to stop doing something because the one police department. Now, you're going to say, "But Steve, Kansas Highway Patrol is likewise a police department, but just simply covers an entire state." Yeah, the size of that organization makes this highly, highly unusual. But it's a good ruling. And if it gets taken up on appeal, hopefully it'll stand up. So everybody sent it. Thanks a lot, including Tom. From 9news.com out of Kansas. Federal judge grants injunction banning the Kansas two-step highway patrol tactic. Questions or comments? Put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. People who say they don't care what people think are usually desperate to have people think they don't care what people think.